Hello?
Hey, Dad.
Hey, Jack.
All right, it should be recording now.
Okay, good.
So are you ready for the
Yep.
questions?
Okay.
All right. What is your name?
First name is that pretty easy. Hayes Ratledge. Hayes Osteen Ratledge.
How old are you currently?
85.
Where do you currently live?
608 Stagecoach Court, Greensboro, North Carolina, 27409.
Where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Greensboro, North Carolina, on Pearson Street, and then in 1939, Dad and Mother moved out to go for college, where we lived on 5811 Friendly Avenue at that time. Lived almost near where we're living now. So I grew up basically out of Guilford College area.
What do you think has had the biggest influence on your life?
Well, Jack, really moving out to Guilford College. Just up the area of something about this. It was close to college, and it was a very unique, well, close-bounded, friendly group. And you tied into neighbors knew neighbors, and they helped each other. So the neighborhood was a lot of influence on my early life, because we could count on neighbors, and that kind of neighbors could count on us. And we also close to the church, and that had a big influence on our lives.
I know that your father, my grandfather, was a farmer at one point in time, but what did he do before that?
Well, Dad was a farmer when he grew up, but when he became an adult, he changed his career. He worked for federal government. He was what they call a alcohol tax unit. They now call it alcohol tax firearms. But he fought moonshiners. He fought bootleg whiskey. And that's where he spent most of his career. He was at ATU for 30 years, and then he was, for the last 10 years of his working life, he was a law enforcement chief for the ABC Board of Greensboro, North Carolina. So basically he was in law enforcement work most of his life.
All right. My dad told me that you were born right before the stock market crashed. How was it growing up during the Great Depression?
I was too young. I remember that. You know, we look back on Daddy's papers and work there. It was tough. Daddy was without a job for some time, and that's when he went to work for the federal government. And he worked very hard, but I was not aware of it. I remember Daddy early on, he would eat a nab and maybe some slight to drink. He just didn't have much in early years, so it was hard on the family, but I was too young to realize it at that time.
All right. Do you remember FDR or the New Deal, or how you or your parents felt about him or the New Deal?
Well, I did. You know, my dad basically is a mother of Republicans, and FDR was a Democrat. But that time in life, that was very important, and I was always strong for that. I felt he had a great influence on our country, and he came at a very important time in the lives of our country. And so I was endorsed of the New Deal, yes.
All right. While the Great Depression was winding down, America entered the World War II after Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. Do you remember that at all?
Yes, I do.
World War II or Pearl Harbor. What can you tell me about what you remember about that?
Well, I remember what a tragic situation that was, Jack, and you almost had to live that time to understand, because in the more recent future, people look back and said, how in the world could we have done that? But that time, the war was in such a tragic event with Japan. So many of our soldiers were being murdered and brutalized and tortured that most people at that time were in favor of the bomb. I've heard many people say if I was on board, I would personally release the bomb. Now, in this day and time, that's not very popular. And we look back and say, why? But it's like I say, you walk in somebody else's moccasin before you can make a decision. So at that time, most people were in favor of that because it was a tragic thing and it happened in our life with Pearl Harbor.
World War II ended September 2nd, 1945. What do you remember about the end of World War II? Did you have any family or friends that fought in it that you remember, them coming home or something? Or?
No, we didn't. It was kind of weird because so many of our people have been in war, but I don't remember any of my friends fighting in World War II. Most of my brothers and sisters, of course, were not at age to be serving the war, so I didn't serve. My brother served, but it was after the conflict was over. He was he was in Japan, but that was after the sign of after the war was over.
What do you remember about the arms race or nuclear testing during the Cold War?
No, I don't remember much about that.
All right. What do you recall about the United States landing the first man on the moon?
Fantastic. Everybody was excited about it. I mean, that was just tremendous, almost unbelievable. Even look at that at this time, how could that have happened? So that was a major event that we just kind of, our country sometimes have just kind of been at all loose ends, and so they just kind of bound our country together, and we were all very much enthralled with that. It was quite a major event, so that kind of got us company on the right track again.
Did you watch the live footage or anything? I'm pretty sure they aired it on TV. Did you watch that?
Yes.
What do you remember about the Vietnam War? Were you for it or against it, or did you have any friends or family that fought in that war?
Well, that's an interesting war. I wish we hadn't gone into it, but once we were into it, I think the soldiers that were to serve their country because they felt that was the right thing to do were badly mistreated and treated very poorly when they came back home. So that was not a popular war, but some of the people in the country who went to Vietnam and kind of talked against our country were not very favorably accepted by people in this country. It was not a good war. It was a war that the guys fought, and they thought it was the right thing to do, and we owed them a better treatment than we gave them.
Did you have any friends or family that fought in that? No. What event in U.S. history stands out the most to you that you lived through?
Oh, that's a good question. You asked me. I guess it was I don't know, probably the Cold War. I don't know, World War II. I'll have to say that. I go back on that one. Because that time I can remember that when we used to read the paper every day and see how far the Italians or the Germans had tapped into Egypt, and we were really concerned about our survival and survival of humanity because of the Axis and the Germans and the Japanese fighting. So that was probably the greatest, and was Tom Brokaw says, the greatest generation of our lives. So that was the most amazing passing event of our lives. Now, a lot of things have happened since then, Dan. The computer, the technology that's coming on now, I don't know how in the world we could ever have got along with that. So I guess the technology thing, the computer, in the more modern age has been the greatest thing that's happened to me in our lives personally.
Well, that leads up to my next question. How do you feel about technology, and how do you think kids growing up today have it different than it was when you grew up?
It's just a whole different world. There's so much more potential and so much capability that our kids can learn quicker so much early in life and realize more of their potential than we ever could because we just didn't have those things behind us. Now, what we don't have today is probably the chance to interact one-on-one with a lot of our neighbors and our family. But the technology has changed our lives today and the future. And I'm a great believer in technology. I have computers and smartphones, and that's who we are. So that probably has had the greatest influence, just like back during when they had the Industrial Revolution, the computer revolution is even more significant than that.
All right. Thank you. I think that's all I need.
Thanks, Jack.
All right. Bye.